This is from Inman.com. Again, a real estate industry site for agents and brokers. And let me go ahead and read the article. The Airbnbust is upon us, is the quote. A tweet hints at Airbnb's fall. But is it right? Social media users claim short-term rental bookings are collapsing, but the data tells another story. Inman reached out to Airbnb and to some experts who follow the short-term rental space. So let me go here. All right. The tweet was shared more than 8,000 times. More than 53,000 people liked it. Scores replied. So what did this viral social media post have to say? Simple. The Airbnbust is upon us. The tweet, originally posted on October 16th, specifically shares an image of a post from what appears to be a Facebook group for Airbnb hosts. The post shows two different comments claiming that there has recently been a drop-off in short-term rental bookings. Most of the responses lean toward Schadenfreude, with a multitude of people criticizing Airbnb hosts for excessive fees, outlandish cleaning requirements, and gobbling up housing stock. The angst captured in the comments has become so significant that it has spilled over and earned news coverage of its own. So here it is. The tweet started, the Airbnbust is upon us. And somebody clipped here. What's going on with Airbnb? No bookings at all. Has anyone seen a huge increase or decrease in bookings over the last 3 or 4 months? We went from at least 50% occupancy to literally zero the last 2 months. I'm just curious if this is something only going on with my property or if other people are seeing similar things. I'm in Palm Springs. Where are you located? So 179 comments from that. But yeah, it continues on. A number of other similar posts have also recently popped up on platforms such as TikTok. And amid the pile-on, the theory that Airbnb and its hosts are in trouble has become widespread on social media. All of this begs the question, is Airbnb experiencing a bust? Are bookings down? Are hosts facing some sort of apocalypse? Inman reached out to Airbnb and to a handful of experts who follow the short-term rental space, and the short answer is no. There does not appear to be some sort of bust happening. Anecdotal stories of lower booking numbers notwithstanding, overall Airbnb is still generally having a good year. That said, there are some changing dynamics in the market, and there are real reasons some individual hosts might actually be seeing a dip in bookings right now. Here's what you need to know. Is the Airbnb bust a real thing? To get to the bottom of the alleged bust, Inman first contacted Airbnb. In an emailed statement, a spokesperson subsequently pointed to the company's latest earnings report and said guest demand on Airbnb was as high as ever in Q2, and Airbnb significantly outperformed the rest of the travel industry. The numbers from the latest earnings report do show that in the second quarter of this year, the company's booked nights and experiences, the latter of which are activities hosted by locals, were higher than in any other quarter in the company's past. The numbers are also show that 75% of newly activated and booked listings were snatched up by travelers in the second quarter of this year at a faster rate than they were a year ago. These numbers suggest that at least during the second quarter of this year, which spanned from April through June, Airbnb bookings were apparently doing well. But those numbers also may not satisfy everyone because in the time since the second quarter, the economy has shifted significantly. Interest rates are way up, as is inflation, and the housing market has slowed down. To understand that, or what has been happening more recently, Inman spoke with Jamie Lane, Vice President of Research at AirDNA, a major short-term rental tracking and data firm, and Lane said that Airbnb's good year has continued through the present. Demand is up. Bookings are higher than they've ever been during the month of September. We're not seeing any drop in booking activity compared to what we're typically seeing at this time. A report from the AirDNA further shows that in September, travelers spent a collective total of 18.4 million nights in short-term rentals. The report further notes that September saw a new record for performance in the post-pandemic period, with the total demand nights exceeding September 2019 levels by 26.6%. Other companies are seeing similar trends. Aaron Rue, principal at RET Ventures, which invests in a number of startups, including Turnover B&B, a company that provides cleaning services and software for tens of thousands of short-term rentals. Rue told Inman that turnover B&B not only isn't seeing any sort of bust, but in fact, the company's data shows that this month is going to be their strongest month ever, even with seasonality. They're seeing the same thing as AirDNA, Rue added. So why are some hosts allegedly seeing fewer bookings? The takeaway from Lane and Rue is that overall there doesn't appear to be a bust happening, but that doesn't mean that for certain hosts it can't feel like a bust. Lane said that part of what is happening is that some hosts might be experiencing some seasonality, wherein bookings were up in the summer but are down in the fall. There's a big drop in demand from July to September and from July to October, he explained. Also, some meaningful supply and demand dynamics are at play. Lane explained that the number of short-term rentals has increased lately, which means that while the overall number of bookings is up, on average, everyone is individually each seeing their bookings go down. Because supply grew faster than demand, we saw overall occupancy decline, Lane explained. A useful analogy might be a grocery store that offers bread from 3 different companies. If the store sells bread from 6 companies, the grocery store will probably end up with more sales. But the individual bread companies might end up with fewer each. In this case, Airbnb is the grocery store and the hosts are the bread companies. Rue mentioned a similar trend, saying that due to an increase in the supply of short-term rentals, bookings per host are slightly down. Still, the operative word there is slightly. AirDNA data shows that occupancy stood at 58.1% in September. That's a mere 1.2% dip compared to the same period last year, and it's actually up 11.1% compared to 2019. The takeaway then is that seasonality, rising supply, and last year's boom may all be shaping the immediate term experiences of some hosts, even as the overall trend has been an upward one. What about the fees and cleaning requirements that everyone hates? A big part of the social media discussion over the so-called Airbnb bust involves complaints about cleaning requirements and excessive fees. The general idea is that requiring guests to clean and pay fees is driving people away from Airbnbs toward hotels. Airbnb nowadays really feels like a scam, one person replied to the viral tweet. Greedy house owners squeezing out as much as they can with doing less than minimum. Over $100 per night in fees, another wrote. Just not a reasonable proposition. What the is a service fee anyway? They also expect you to clean dishes, throw the garbage, do laundry. Yet a third complained, should I also cook a 3-course meal before I leave? The numbers on demand and occupancy above suggest that overall these complaints have translated into a broad movement away from Airbnb. But as always, there are winners and losers. For example, Lane noted that thanks to a large supply, there's a lot of competition for accommodating guests right now. Now I think hosts are learning that if they want to book out their home, they've got to try a bit harder than they did last year. Cleaning and fees play a part in trying harder, with Lane noting that hosts who include their fees up front are doing better. Hosts that do that are seeing significantly higher bookings than hosts who don't, because that's what guests want. Transparency, of course. Lane also said properties with amenities, such as pools, good views, are doing better than more generic listings. Rue made a similar point about amenities acting as strong selling points, and adding that there seems to be a widening gap between amateur and small-time hosts and professional hosts with differentiated Airbnbs. One self-described host who replied to the original viral tweet also mentioned that cutting back on cleaning and maintenance requirements prompted bookings to go up. Saw a decrease in listings this summer, so I dropped a few of the more extreme chore requirements, i.e. mow the lawn, wow, brush, vacuum, the pool, and the bookings went back to normal. No kidding.
Wow.
The market is still strong, but you can't expect renters to do as much. No kidding. The end of the coronavirus pandemic may also simply be shifting preferences. Peter Rex is the founder of CEO of property management and software company Rex. Among other things, Rex's company operates both short-term rentals and a hotel. And he said some of the more remote listings that became popular during the pandemic might be losing their appeal as the health crisis fades and people return to cities. We've seen a rejiggering with where people are going. Rex also said some hosts are realizing that operating a short-term rental is more work than they realized, and that it costs more money, prompting them, in turn, to potentially raise their prices. Running a hotel, it's a tremendous amount of work, and so is running an Airbnb. All of which is to say that fees and cleaning requirements may not be sinking the Airbnb business model, but along with shifting tastes, such factors could be helping sort the industry, driving guests to certain types of units over others. And the result of all these trends is that some consumers are fed up, and some hosts perhaps aren't seeing the kind of bookings they might have wanted. Nevertheless, all of the experts who spoke with Inman for this story indicated they expected the short-term rental concept to stick around. The business model has already survived through the multiple economic cycles. Wired even asked back in 2020, is this the end of Airbnb? And so far, the numbers suggest it's only continuing to grow. Short-term rentals, Rex concluded, are not going away. That was a long one.
That was a long article, buddy.
Yeah. What do you have to say about all that? It touched on a lot of points, and I know you're an Airbnb host. I've been one in the past. What do you say to all that?
Yeah. Well, I think the approach to the article was good. It's correct, that there's becoming an oversupply. Like much in real estate, it tends to maybe overshoot initially and then find its center and then overshoot again. Also, those that are better at it will be more successful. So, and it's a different phase. We are coming out of a pandemic environment where gathering was different, how people gathered, where they gathered.
Yeah.
So trends are adjusting.
As I read this, it kind of reminded me. So we have some friends. I think I've told you about them. They have a great place, Constellation Creek. Just a little plug for those guys. In just north of Truckee, Sierraville is the name of the little community, and Babbling Brook couldn't be any better than. I mean, it's an amazing place. They've got like 7 or 8 different places, but when we visited them, I think that was back in June or July, they were kind of complaining that things were not as good as before because they would get that San Francisco to the country flow. And that's kind of what they were talking about here, huh?
Totally. So, yeah, I mean, in my place, that's a traditional vacation spot. It was a LA and even San Diego to the mountains. So it slowed a bit.
Yeah.
Do you think some people got on planes and went to different destinations? Maybe cities had more activity than outlying areas. Longer term Airbnbs have actually improved dramatically. So when a company like Airbnb and AirDNA gives numbers, they're not always those, short vacation getaways because there's a lot of business travel. There are a lot of people who are embracing the work from home dynamic and just traveling all over the place and working in different destinations.
Yeah.
That's changed the long-term dynamic in Airbnb. But I will say the one thing, like any other real estate related consideration or purchase, those that understand the business better, those that are more experienced, those that can manage better are going to have a more successful model. There's some marketing, there's some design involved in Airbnb.
Well, when we talked about this yesterday, just as a refresher for us, I think you hit it right on the head, and it says a lot, but it's a business. And businesses change, and you have to adapt to all these things. And I think for a lot of people that run Airbnbs, they're not business people. And this is a shock to them that it shouldn't remain constant, the supply and demand. It is a business. I think the other thing, go ahead.
Like any other business, the bigger your margins, and this is, I think, quite relevant, the bigger your margins, the more likely you are to be successful long-term. And what I specifically mean by that is that if you've purchased recently and you need a high return to keep the place and make it work, well, you're getting kind of upset now because it's not as consistent as it was at one time. If you purchased
you're gonna have to pull out some money. Yeah,
exactly. And you have just more of a margin. You don't have as big of a mortgage to sustain the space. Then, you can ride the wave and make the adjustments. Real estate's always that way. If you're maxed out, you're on the edge. Yeah. You can be pushed over that edge.
Yeah. Well, you said yesterday, right? I mean, the second or third homes, we might start seeing some fallout from this kind of thing. People not able
Yeah,
to pay that
it's
mortgage because
it's
of
happening, slowing down a bit. Values are
yeah.
pulling back a little bit. It just the second,
Yeah, do you
third
see it
home
up there?
markets,
Do you see it
yes,
up there where
for
you do?
sure.
Oh
They
wow.
always are the first to pull back. You
Got it.
know, then the suburbs pull back, then the city. We
Mm-hmm.
get it last in the city. So your comment that
Right.
we keep like kind of being a little surprised every week that wow,
Right.
our local city market is still holding up. It's
Right.
really strong still,
Yeah.
and those are not the first markets to pull back. It is the second,
Got it.
the suburbs first.
Yeah.
Um,
The other observation I wanted to point out is because I see it on my wife's TikTok, I see it on Instagram, other social media. Um, there is this idea, and trust me, I will look for it and I will do the side hustle. I feel like we all need side hustles, but this idea again of kind of get rich quick with Airbnb management or it's everywhere. It's rife and it's really stale, right? Because I know you've been doing Airbnb for, God, man, could it be close to 10 years now? I don't know.
it's been more than 10 years.
Has it? Oh
Yes.
God.
Before
But
Airbnb existed, we were doing short-term rentals.
but all of a sudden it's a trend and everybody thinks they can make a ton of money on it. No, there's work involved. It is a business, and
Uh,
yeah,
there are a lot of nuances. I mean, it's even they talk about real estate and everybody wants to get into real estate, buy and sell, and they're going to get
yeah,
rich, right?
right,
Airbnb is even more than just dealing with real estate. It
yeah.
is
Oh
even
God, yeah,
more.
yeah.
It's hard. Uh,
Wait. This will be super quick, and I know we need to move on. But what has been your most bizarre Airbnb story that you've had to deal with? I think I remember one, but what would that be? And I'll share you mine
I
because I don't
haven't
think I've ever
had
told you this.
horrific situations, and trust me, it's all worked for me just fine. But the
Okay.
one I had was, um, yeah, it's got to be the one that stands out for sure. Is I had some influencers staying in our unit,
Oh.
um, and they kept having problems, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
man, what's going on here? They're
Uh
having
huh.
electrical problems. Um,
Okay.
I don't understand why the breakers are tripping. I'm walking around. Are you guys using blow dryers, heaters? Electric heat is the worst thing on an electrical system. Draws a lot of current. No,
Right.
I'm walking around every room I'm looking in corners. Maybe they don't even know they're using a heater, electric heater. But in the end,
Yeah.
I'm like, fine, I'm going to send in here. I'm going to rewire this. I'm going to fix it.
Oh my God.
I did so. And then I ended up going in, I don't know, a week or two later.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, fine, I'm doing a walkthrough to prep for you to leave. And in this case, I went in the half bathroom, which I did not go in previously.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Where
the
was it?
only
What was
space I
it?
didn't go in.
Yeah.
They had chicklings on the floor. They were using the whole half bath with new chicklings and heat lamps,
Ah,
keeping
yeah,
them warm in the
yeah.
winter. So the bathroom was drawing massive current, blowing the breakers.
Wow.
And
Wow. And they wouldn't
no,
mention that, of course. Why
of
would they?
course not. So I ended up recouping that money, not willingly from them.
Right.
And I've had some struggles with Airbnb, but I did get the money through
Wow.
Airbnb for that improvement. But yeah, raising chicklings in an Airbnb.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you two of mine super quick. So one was, and this is, I'm sure you knew this, but it didn't really dawn on us, but no alcohol in the room. There was a guy who was an addict or a former alcoholic, and it was just too much for him to deal with. So we pulled the bottles away from him. That was pretty mellow, understandable. But the other thing was we had a couple who came in very enthusiastic, very nice, very millennial, and she was a life coach. I think she was 25, so I don't know what that means coaching wise. But the other thing was he was in venture capital. Dot dot dot. It's like okay, whatever. Um, they were a little finicky, but I found out later, maybe he was taking drugs. He came up missing, and he came up missing. The 7-Eleven over on Rowena and Hillhurst, or not
Yes.
Hillhurst,
No.
Rowena, and
And Hyperion.
anyway,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah, ended up disappeared. I don't know if I think they did find him a week later, but that was weird. And then when I looked into his background, he was a scam artist. He had all sort, along with his mother who lived in Utah. They were complete criminals who were just kind of on the lam from Airbnb to Airbnb. And I was like, oh man, I'm just glad it couldn't have been worse, you know. But that was pretty weird. So anyway, so to sum it up, what? Airbnb, it's a business. Get used to it.
Well, it is a business, and it's a business that could be risky if you don't pay attention to it. It's not a business you can be successful at just kind of as a
Right.
you know
No
part-time
seat in the pants.
gig. Yeah. And I think a lot of those comments you're reading, maybe some of those people are that way. They're giving you half service, but I can assure you, like our cleaning fees, man,
Mhm.
our space is immaculate, and it takes time to clean our space. So
Yeah.
we're not making any
I
money
believe
off that stuff. It's
Yeah.
now the other side of that, the service fees, all that, that's Airbnb.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they don't distinguish between what they send the host and what they keep for themselves. That's very convenient for them
Right.
to
Is it
not do
still
that.
around 8-9%, or has it gone up a little when you
Um,
when you include?
it's in that range. Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus they have the hotel tax on top of that, which
Oh,
goes to the
right.
city.
Yeah.
That doesn't come to us either.
Yeah.
So the costs are expensive. I'm not disputing that for a moment, but
Yeah.
you know, then my comment always to people making those, like, they're angry. They're angry because they're having to pay that cost. They don't have to pay it. Go somewhere else. Don't stay there.
Yeah.
You
Exactly.
know?
Make a choice. Yeah.